My brothers and sisters in Christ, we conclude the liturgical year with this great feast of Christ the King. This feast was really initiated in the 1920s by Pope Pius XI to bring about the social reign of Christ. This was at the time of the rise of Nazi socialism, but shortly after the Bolshevik Revolution. The Church had a duty to proclaim the gospel of the kingdom and to build up the kingdom of Christ. After the reforms of the Second Vatican Council, this feast was moved to the end of the liturgical year and emphasizes Christ's kingship, his lordship over all creation. He will come as the King of eternal glory. He will come to judge the living and the dead. Perhaps the most memorable image of the Last Judgment is Michelangelo's Last Judgment scene depicted in the Sistine Chapel. There we see the Lord coming on his cloud in majesty and splendor. It is at once an awe-inspiring image, yet also a fearful one. If you look very carefully in that image, the book of life is actually quite thin, and the book of death is quite thick. In our gospel today, we have a vivid example of the separation of the sheep from the goats. Jesus' message is very clear. Whatever you did for the least of my brothers and sisters, you did for me. The ultimate criterion of judgment is whether or not we have loved. Not only loved our family members and friends, but loved the least. In those who are hungry, have we fed them? In those who are naked, have we clothed them? In those who are thirsty, have we quenched their thirst, not only with water, but with love? In Mother Teresa's sisters' chapels all over the world, there's a crucifix with the simple words, I thirst. Do we satiate the love of Jesus in the poorest of the poor? There are different types of poverty. There is the material poverty that we see on our streets day in, day out. People who do not have the basic necessities of life in terms of food, clothing, shelter. People who are physically sick and are in need of visits. But then there's also the other type of poverty, what Mother Teresa used to call the great poverty of loneliness. We seem to be better connected with technology today, but do we ever actually look at our brothers and sisters, especially those who suffer in material poverty or loneliness? And do we offer them more than what a non-governmental organization could offer or a not-for-profit organization could offer? Do we offer them Jesus? Do we offer them God's love? If we do not offer them God's love, then we offer too little. And we will be held responsible for our lack of charity toward them, especially toward the poor. Depriving a man of his wages is a crime that calls out to heaven for vengeance. But so does saying to the poor, you do not matter. Pope Francis is adamant that we should be a poor church, a church for the poor. He is adamant that we cannot be indifferent toward the plight of the poor. He says indifference kills. Indifference says you do not matter. But every person on this earth, no matter how rich or poor, matters to God. For them, he sent his only begotten Son into the world. And for them, his only begotten Son suffered upon the cross. Jesus was born in immense poverty, with no roof over his head, no proper bed, scant clothing. He was born into poverty. He preached amongst the poor, and he died poor. He died poor, stripped even of his clothing, out of love for us. He practiced what he preached, but by his poverty, he made us rich. Through his outpouring of his precious blood, he cleansed us and made us whole. He clothed us in a royal dignity in baptism. But now he calls us to look upon others in their poverty and make them rich in the things that matter most, rich in faith, rich in hope, and above all, rich in love. This is the criterion of judgment. Whatever you did for the least of my brothers and sisters, you did for me.